Okay, so Tottenham have a really big week ahead this week, ahead of the European transfer market window closure on Monday the 2nd of September for most European countries. And in this video we're going to have a look at sort of three areas that will have a big impact this week and how it will affect the team going forward. The first one is Daniel Levy. Is he the villain he's so often painted out to be? Or really, has he had a good transfer window? Has he been steering the ship correctly? So we'll have a look at that. The second one is Mauricio Pochettino. Has he been a help or has he been a hindrance really in the transfer window? And the third one is looking at the options of the four players, Christian Eriksen, Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld and Danny Rose. You know, do Tottenham look to sell, extend or run down, and the implications on those? Now, if you want to, before we go on, if you want to keep up to date with videos like this on Tottenham, on other top Premier League teams, we do match analysis, player profiles, transfer window news. Click the red subscribe button below, click the bell notification, and you'll be kept up to date with all the latest uploads. Now, firstly, on to Daniel Levy. Now, he comes under constant criticism, as most chairmen of Premier League teams do at some point. He's accused of not spending, he's accused of not negotiating contract extensions, he's accused of being trying to squeeze too hard on transfer negotiations. On the other hand, some people see him as a shrewd businessman and probably one of the best chairmen in the Premier League. Now, I have a lot of sympathy for Daniel Levy. He's come under criticism from me probably in the past, but I have a lot of sympathy for him. And, you know, he's had his hands tied over the last 2 or 3 years while he's been building the new stadium. And it's, you know, without a doubt, it's probably the best stadium in the Premier League. He took the capacity from 36,000 at White Hart Lane to about 62,000 in the new Tottenham Stadium. And, you know, to sustain a top 4 Premier League team, that is absolutely vital. And he's done it, he's delivered it, albeit taking a bit longer, but that's there. And that's tick, you know, one big tick for Daniel Levy. The second thing from a business commercial side of view is that he's negotiated a massive extension to the sponsorship with AIE. So he's bringing the commercial side, the financial side in on that thing. Now, the other side, from a playing point of view, he's brought a world-class manager in Mauricio Pochettino, and you know he's managed to manage that situation through difficult times so far. And you know, you've got to remember that most top managers aren't forever. They don't stay. You know, very few of these top managers stay around at clubs for very long. You know, in terms of transfers, he said he was going to back Pochettino this year and back the team, and he has. He spent big on Ndombele, he spent big on Lo Celso, albeit alone at the moment, but it's a future commitment to a big spend. He's obviously spent fairly big on a young player in Sessegnon and also another young player in Jack Clark. So he's put his money there behind it. He also tried to get Paulo Dybala. It would have been a massive 60-70 million outlay, and from what I understand, that was a deal that was being worked on for 2 or 3 weeks, and they worked very hard to bring that player. So the criticism of his not spending, I think, you know, is probably unjust. Now, contract extensions, that's another area he's come under, and this is the focus this week, really, with those 4 players. And, you know, it's got to be said, it takes 2 to tango on a contract extension. If a player is not prepared to come to the table and extend, or is asking for outlandish figures, then it isn't Daniel Levy's fault. It does take 2 to tango. So I think he does come under criticism, and I think so far in this transfer window, he's played really a blinder. I won't say it's perfect, but a blinder. This next week, 10 days, is going to really dictate how people look on Daniel Levy for this transfer window. Now, next on to Mauricio Pochettino. So has he helped or hindered the transfer window, the transfer process? Has he helped or hindered this next week, 10 days, which is obviously a big time for Daniel Levy and his negotiating team. And it could be argued that, in some players he's hindered and others he's helped. I mean, Erikson, for instance, whatever your views on Erikson, he is no doubt a quality player, and you look at his stats, he is. By all means, Spurs have offered him a large contract, we understand, and it's a very sizable contract, but the story is he's not prepared to sign, he's not prepared to come to the table to negotiate. Now, is Mauricio Pochettino helping? By leaving him on the bench for the first game, and then in the second game play him in a role that really isn't suited for, in a defensive-minded, left-sided midfield role. Is he helping? Is he hindering? I'm not so sure on Erikson that perhaps his decisions are. You can argue that Pochettino should be totally detached from the transfer process and should just pick what he wants to pick. You look at Toby Alderweireld. I think he's played a blinder with him. He made him captain in one of the pre-season games. He's played him the full 90 minutes in the first two matches. And he's obviously a player that, he wants to keep, and he's showed faith in him and put him in. And, that's one now that I think Pochettino has helped Daniel Levy. And, at 30 years old, I think Alderweireld deserves a good contract. So, but again, you need Toby Alderweireld to come to the table and negotiate. In terms of Vertonghen, has he hindered the process with Vertonghen? He was superb last year. He was the go-to central defender. He's not even in the squad for the first game. There's no other centre half on the bench in that first game. He's subbed for the second game and doesn't come on. There's an argument for saying, should Pochettino really be trying to rotate his players through these first 2 or 3 games? One, for fitness, and 2, to help in terms of transfer negotiations behind the scenes. You can argue for and against it. Klopp very much plays rotation early on in the season. He's had a lot of games, mind you, but he's brought Gomez in and Gomez out at the back. He's put Matip in. He's taken Matip out. Same with Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's had him in. He's had him off. So he's rotated his players to, 1, build that fitness, but 2, build that long-term sustainability for keeping players and looking after players. So you could argue with Vertonghen that Pochettino really hasn't done Daniel Levy and his team any favours. Danny Rose, another one. He's not going into the last year of his contract. He's got 2 years left on his contract. But there's a player that has said he wants to leave. Spurs have sort of left him out of the pre-season squad initially to go and find another club. He hasn't, and he's played all the minutes in the first 2 games. Now, probably Pochettino didn't really have much option, but it'd be interesting to see going into the game with Newcastle, whether he picks him or with Ben Davies coming back, whether he makes any changes there. So Mauricio Pochettino, in some ways, from how he's managed the football team and the playing process, he's helped some situations and hindered others, and that could have a big impact on this week ahead. Now, the third area is obviously the players. Do you sell them? Do you extend them? Or do you allow them to run down the contracts? And as I said earlier, it takes 2 to tango on this. It's all right, us all saying here and out there, well, give him a contract, extend him, sell him, keep him. It takes 2 to tango, and if the player isn't now, with selling, the power now for this next week, 10 days, is in the player and the buying club's hands. And there's questions for that will be asked, I'm sure, of Daniel Levy. Will you accept 20 million for a player like Erikson? And what does he do? Lo Celso was brought in as a long-term replacement for Erikson, a like for like. So does he take the 20 million, or does he say no? Let's run down that contract. He's trying to extend the contract, we know, but will Erikson extend? So that's going to have a big impact on that in terms of extending. Again, he needs that player to come to the table, and he doesn't want to be held to ransom. If he's held to ransom on wages on length of contracts, that's just storing up problems for the future. So it's a very difficult thing on extension. And then does he allow them to run down? You know, the advantage is he's got a good squad for the next 12 months ahead, and it allows him to plan for the next transfer windows, the January and the summer. But the downside is how does that hinder Pochettino with his team? Does he just freeze them out altogether and go with the players that he knows are going to be longer term? You know, with Lo Celso and Eriksen, does he, you know, is Lo Celso going to be happy just playing in the wings of Eriksen? So there's lots of big impacts on the decisions that are made in this next week, 10 days. And I don't envy Daniel Levy and his team in trying to do this. I don't envy Pochettino if all players are allowed to just run down their contract. It's a real difficult situation. What will be interesting for all of us is to see how it pans out, see who Pochettino plays against Newcastle. Who does he leave on the bench? Who does he bring on? It'd be interesting to see who does get sold, who does get extended, and who's allowed to run down. And then for the season ahead, we'll see it all unfold. So I don't envy, I wouldn't want to be in either Pochettino's shoes or Levy's, but it's nice to look on from afar. I'd be interested to know your comments on those players, those 4 players. You know, should he freeze them out? Should he extend, you know, do everything he can to extend them? Or does he just say, no, we'll let them run down the contracts, we'll plan ahead for the transfer windows in January and summer, and they will have to play second best to the squad that is the long-term future of Tottenham Hotspur. So interested to hear your comments below. There are my thoughts on what is a big week ahead for Tottenham, and one that can have a massive impact on their season. If you like the videos, appreciate any support you can give in terms of a like. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel and see future videos like this and other top Premier League teams, click the subscribe button here or the red subscribe button below. And thanks once again for watching.